KoshienCast, where we only like about half of what we watch here anyway. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest. No one, actually, because Matt's actually still out on his honeymoon right now. So, as per usual, we are covering week 4 of the spring season, covering all sports anime from April 23rd to April 29th. No particular announcements this week. Again, I will be handling this episode on my own, so if y'all don't mind, I am going to just jump right into Yowamushi Pedal. Okay, so this week is the beginning of the Inter-High. We have the teams arriving at Utsunomiya, which is where it starts, and it has a giant course, of course, and for some reason, Miki's friend, Aya is there, because she's bored. And then, when they get there, Sohoku is very disappointed to find out that Hakone is still getting all the attention from them. And, apparently Sohoku also has, the single-digit tags because, they won the previous year. So that means they get to start the race. We also see Naruko go to visit Mito Tsuji to basically just tell him that they're going to race again. Sure. And then there's one more major interaction between Kaburagi and one of Hakone's members, Dobashi, who is their second fastest racer, and he basically calls into question Kaburagi's faith in his team because he doesn't actually know if Onoda is truly strong. And that's pretty much the episode. We also see the opening season ceremony, where Sohoku goes ahead and just kind of introduces himself, and Kaburagi is somewhat beside himself because he's so shaken up from his meeting with Dobashi. So, this episode sucked. Okay, that's a little harsh. It wasn't, terrible. At the same time, I'm struggling really to think of things I liked about it. I think one of the big issues with this episode is that it's trying to establish tension where there doesn't really need to be any. I don't mind that Kaburagi is having doubts in Sohoku, because, he even mentions, wow, I basically gave up my life to join this team that I really don't have much of a connection for it with. I don't know, I don't know how strong they truly are. But the problem is that he does. That was the entire point of the prelim tournament, the prelim match, where he kind of gets overconfident, and so Hoku has to sweep, the rest of the team has to come in and kind of help him out and kind of get his bearings back. This isn't character development that we need for Kaburagi, because this is something that should have already taken place. I would have liked this interaction between Dobashi and Kaburagi, where, Dobashi actually manages to get into his head a little bit, cause him to question, hey, what am I really doing here with this team? But this should have happened before the prelims. I could have seen a situation where Kaburagi, thinks to himself, okay, if I can't trust this team, I'm going to race ahead on my own. And that's, where he kind of has this big collapse in the middle of the race, and, everybody comes and saves him, and, they make up, all the time that they lost, and, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, y'all saw the episode, I assume. But this is all happening, just before the Inter-High, and it's again, we have this whole thing where Kaburagi is doubting the nature of the team. And I just don't see what the point of this is. Again, you could have had, he's not really making much of a case for himself for why he should have been on this team. Koga probably should have been their 6th member, because, he's supposed to be this magnificent genius of stamina, the stamina simpleton, but again, he's being subbed out for this first year who doesn't really seem to know what he's doing and have any sort of connection to the rest of the team. Koga, at the very least, seems to believe in the strength of all of the members there, so I just don't understand what the point of having Kaburagi even is. I also don't understand why we have to have this big deal about Hakone being like having this whole situation where they're overshadowing Sohoku because, they arrive in their big giant bus and, they're kind of lording over Sohoku and everybody is paying attention. All the journalists are freaking out. All the fangirls are, like, squeeing over the presence of Hakone. And nobody cares about Sohoku. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, does literally nobody care about the returning champions? Like, at the opening ceremony, we see, more people who are getting more into it. But, again, it's the opening ceremony. Like, anybody you throw there is going to be freaking out about it regardless. People should be paying more attention to Sohoku. Yes, I understand that they don't have their star members anymore, but they still have the guy who won who won the entire race for them in the first place with Onoda. Like, surely some people have got to be paying attention to them. I don't mind the fact that Hakone's still more popular because, they are still kind of have that, kingly presence almost. But it doesn't mean anything when they lost last year. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, I digress. There's also this whole situation with Naruko and Midotsuji. And really the only thing that you gain from that, and this takes up like a good chunk of the episode, like a good 5 minutes of the episode, and really the only thing you gain from that is that Naruko states to Midotsuji, hey, we're gonna race again. So, be prepared for that. And Midotsuji is like, okay, cool. And I'm trying to figure out what was the point of any part of that episode, or at least any part of that section. Like, we don't gain any sort of new insight about what Naruko's doing. Like, yeah, he brags to him that he's an all-rounder now and not a sprinter, but again, we knew that that's what he was doing in the first place. And, I hate to say it, but frankly, like, even if you would, like, they didn't even try and, like, build up some sort of new technique that Naruko has. And, like, maybe that's what you could have done with that scene, but at the same time, it's like, the techniques in this really aren't that interesting, because, again, you're just pedaling harder. And I'm not disparaging, the sport of cycling. I realize that there is more to it, but really when it comes down to it, you don't really have, like, secret techniques in cycling. It's a very repetitive task, you're constantly moving forward, you're constantly pushing yourself forward. And it doesn't really do much for me. Then there's the beginning of the episode also, I kind of left this out of the summary, with Sugimoto kind of trying to rally all of the other first years in the bus who are going with them, like, hey, like, just keep in mind, we are the secret 7th member of this team. I mean, yeah, sure. I guess they're trying to build up Sugimoto as becoming more of a leader-type character, I guess. Maybe that will have something to do with the Inter-High, but I don't know. It doesn't really work for me very well, just because, we've already seen what happens at the Inter-High. Like, Teshima and Aoyagi were their backups during that race, and they didn't really do much of anything outside of occasionally support them just kind of, like, observe the race and comment on it. They basically served as a liaison between, the actual technique of what's going on and, the viewer who probably doesn't understand anything. They're just there to kind of explain what's actually going on. That was really the purpose of their of the backup characters the prior season, and I just don't really see this show doing anything more to change that. And, speaking of not changing things, I think that was really my big problem with the whole setup with Hakone. Still being, like, the returning god kings of cycling. Like, it feels like the series is just trying to retread old ground. It doesn't really know how to deal with this new dynamic where, the characters who are supposed to be the underdogs are now, they're the returning champions. They're the major force in the cycling world now. And now the original rivals have to come back, they're no longer, like, the dominant force, now they're the competitor. They're the rival now. Or rather, they're the ones who are trying to actually get back their glory. And, like, it feels like because the original author couldn't figure out a way to make this more interesting, I kind of feel like he's just going back to old ground. He's not really justifying any part of this. Like, he's not really going through the motion to, like, build up any of this conflict here. Or not even so much build up the conflict, but he's just rehashing the same thing over and over again. We still have Inoda who's there to return the bottle to Manami. We still have Hakone still being, like, Sohoku still getting completely overshadowed by the presence of Hakone. And just, it doesn't make sense with, like, the context of what's happened before. And I don't know. It's really not working out for me. Maybe it's working out for other people. I don't know. I actually haven't really seen how popular it's been this season, but my general impression has been that people are kind of just like, it's another season of Yawapeda. And it's a shame because I really didn't want it to be just another season of it. But anyway, I still prefer Yowamushi Pedal over the next show I'll be covering, which is Tiger Mask. Okay, so this episode of Tiger Mask is entirely about the 5-on-5 match at the Max Dome. We get a little bit of set out before with Naoto still training with Takaoka at the old gym on Mount Fuji, apparently. But it doesn't last for long because Tiger Mask, or Naoto, decides to take his training back to the Max Dome, where GWM is letting him use their facilities. While he's there, Kevin tries to kill him in the decompression chamber by taking out all of his oxygen. Because Kevin's apparently a psycho now. We get a couple of scenes with Ruri handling Takuma's rehabilitation, which don't really amount to much of anything outside of her kind of keeping Takuma in check by not overdoing it, which I guess is nice. There's this whole small scene with Naoto kind of getting cold feet and calling Yuri. He tries to call her. He immediately hangs up, but then she tries to call him back, and he's very dismayed to find out that she's trying to help somebody rehabilitate himself because, that's really what she wants to do. Anyway, and then it's actually the 5-on-5 match with the Miracles plus Tiger Mask and the wrestlers at the hero wrestling match. I can't always say all the letters, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so in this first match, we have it's versus Miracle 1 and one of the NWJP wrestlers who goes up against... Yeah, he's going up against them. He's about to lose until Tiger Mask, entirely of his own volition, jumps in and saves Miracle 1. Sure, like, Tiger Mask is no... sorry, I'll get into my complaints later, because there are a lot. Anyway, so during some of these matches, what happens is Tiger Mask, one of the New Japan Pro Wrestling challengers manages to beat one of the Miracles, and then immediately afterwards goes towards Tiger Mask and tries to knock him off the rope, because this is a rope match and all of the standbys have to be standing on the rope, and if they fall out of the ring, they lose. He tries to knock Tiger Mask off the rope. Tiger Mask manages to defend himself, and one of the Miracles knocks both of them off, and Tiger Mask is shocked to discover that he was just being used as a sacrificial pawn. Anyway, out of nowhere, Tiger the Third shows up and starts murdering people in the ring of the New Japan Pro Wrestling people, and then just an all-out brawl starts in the ring. They try and call the match, but that doesn't really work. And then Tiger Mask decides to betray GWM at this point to, naturally attack Tiger the Great, and Tiger the Great knocks him away like a fly. That's kind of where the episode ends. So this series is terrible. Okay. Yeah, no, it's terrible. I'm not taking that back. I legitimately hate Naoto. Like, I honestly think out of all the shows that we've ever covered on KoshienCast, I think Naoto might be the worst hero. It's not necessarily the worst series we've ever covered, because we've covered plenty of stuff that's worse than Tiger Mask. Outside of Tsukamoto from Days, he is probably the worst hero I think I've seen. The problem with Naoto, we're trying to delve into his big descent into darkness. He only cares about his revenge against Tiger the Great, right? But that doesn't make any It's not so much that it doesn't make any sense, it's that Naoto never really had anything to establish him anything more than just kind of just a dork, basically. You know, he doesn't know how to talk to Rory. He doesn't really have much of a personality outside of being Tiger Mask. And Tiger Mask himself, you know, by Naoto's own admission, is really less of a person and more just a symbol of what's good. And, you know, I feel like in order to make this sort of descent into darkness work is if you try and build up Naoto himself as being somebody who genuinely wants to uphold the values of Tiger Mask, but you know, he kind of gets caught up in his own desire for revenge. You know, I think there's a legitimately interesting story to be found there, but the problem, you know, I was complaining last episode about Takuma being, like, you know, they should have just been doing all of this with Takuma. I kind of come around on that a little bit. I don't really mind the fact that Takuma is the one who should have been doing this. Takuma shouldn't have been a character. Like, if this is the story they wanted to tell, I think they legitimately could have done that. You just take out the scenes with Takuma, and you start building up and then you start building up Naoto's character more. You use up all that time that you used to build up Takuma, and you build up Naoto as being, you know, this decent guy. You know, he really just wants to do what's right, and he doesn't. But, you know, he just sort of keeps getting obsessed with this revenge against this guy who beat his master, you know, before he finally falls to the dark side. But we don't get that from Naoto. He's just sort of this loser who dons the tiger mask and just kind of fights against guys. He doesn't really have much of a character, but now we're supposed to be sort of disheartened by this fall he's had. It's like, I don't care about his revenge. I've never cared about his revenge. Like, from when we started, his revenge was honestly the last thing on my mind. Yes, I understand that was kind of the driving force of the plot early, like, throughout the series. You know, the whole thing was that, you know, he kept fighting all the wrestlers that GWM threw at him until he could finally get that match against Tiger the Third. But that wasn't really, like, why you were watching the series before. You kind of do it to, you know, the entire reason to watch Tiger Mask is, you know, see these kind of weird, over-the-top, colorful characters. You know, you see Tiger Mask, you know, they made, you know, comically over-the-top evil. Tiger Mask is effectively a superhero that brings them down. Fine, that's the structure. But then it's, like, completely going against that. It's like transitioning immediately from, like, Silver Age comics into, like, 80s dark comics. Like, when, like, Batman started just randomly killing people all of a sudden. Don't quote me on that. I am not an expert on comics. General point I'm trying to make here about the sort of dark descent we're suddenly getting here. And it doesn't work because of that. Also, but what really, really irritates me about Naoto is the fact that he seems genuinely shocked at the fact that the miracles would actually betray him. Like, are you shocked about this? How can this be something? Is this actually the moment where you start to realize, oh no, like, is this who I'm getting involved with? People who don't, like, work together? You beat up one of your former teammates with a chair, needlessly, Tiger Mask. You're just the most selfish character I think I've ever seen. Maybe not ever seen, okay, but it's like the fact that this is the moment when somebody wrongs him, and this is the moment that gets him to realize, oh man, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with GWM? Like, is this really what it took? Was, like, it's such a selfish reason? And it makes me so annoyed with the character. Like, this doesn't make you sympathetic. This makes you just sort of a jerk. I don't know. One other thing I wanted to touch on this episode was how Rory is working with Takuma now, and I don't know. Again, doesn't really do much for me. I guess the whole point of this is that it's supposed to build up Tiger Mask's jealousy even more. You know, he's kind of, or Naoto's jealousy even more. You know, now, you know, she's not only paying attention to him. You know, she has to go take care of her other patients, and, you know, maybe slightly starting to start up something between Takuma and Rory. But, again, this just makes all of Naoto's reasons for wanting to go back completely selfish. Like, this isn't something he's needed to do. Like, you needed to establish Ruri and Tiger Mask's relationship more than just having them go on a date or two and then have that be it. Like, it's not really disheartening for me to see Ruri go out, like, kind of dump Naoto. It's like, yeah, they were barely close to begin with. One final thing I wanted to cover as well is just, apparently Kevin has decided he wants to murder Tiger Mask? Like, okay, I know he wants his revenge for taking down Takuma, but this has gone beyond just sheer anger and gone full-blown psychotic, because Tiger Mask is in the decompression chamber and he just turns off the air there. And it's like, okay, Kevin, you are one of the miracles. Do you legitimately not care about your future wrestling career at GWM? So, like, do you care so little about it that you're even willing to try and kill Tiger Mask over this? Like, he is your partner for your next match. Like, I don't understand your end goal. Like, did you care that much about Takuma? I understand him being your friend, but you're really trying to kill for his sake? For something that he even admits was his fault? Just, I really, really hate Tiger Mask right now. Again, it is not the worst show that we have ever covered here, but it's getting pretty bad. Like, I can have fun with Tiger Mask every now and then, but this is just taking it to a place I don't want to see it go. It's like they suddenly decided that they wanted to tell like a real story to it, you know, this whole story of redemption. And it's like, it's a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, what's wrong with just having like a silly, like, over-the-top hero take down silly over-the-top villains? Like, I don't know. Anyway, I digress. I think I'm just gonna jump right into Big Wind-Up on my own here.
Dude, Matt, what are you talking about? I've been here the whole time. You just won't shut up.
What? Oh my gosh, everybody, I guess I have a very special guest this week, Matt.
Yep, it's me from the past.
Welcome. So if you wouldn't mind, would you please jump into Big Wind-Up?
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So the episode is essentially just a continuation. You know, we go back into the early part of the game against Mihoshi. At first, you're trying to figure out what kind of approach the different pitchers are going to have. And so Mihoshi is trying to trick his opponents, you know, by relying on Abe's signals. And he ends up facing Oda, who is this tall, towering, out-of-town player who Mihoshi recruited from, I think, Osaka, but they haven't said it specifically. Who is trying to figure out what's so unique about Mahoshi's pitches, and he ends up volunteering just to let himself get struck out because he wants to learn more about exactly what Mahoshi's doing. Tajima is able to take a couple pitches from Kano, but then muscle a forkball into the outfield and get on base, but no one else is able to move him along, and they're not able to do anything against Kano's pitching. So ultimately, the two teams are sort of at a stalemate because right now Mihoshi and Kano are both pitching well enough that neither side has figured out how to put together any runs. There's a significant conflict later in the episode when Oda says that he doesn't really care about getting struck out. He just wanted to learn. And Kano reveals that he's legitimately worried about being bested by Mihoshi and unable to prove that he can stand on his own instead of feeling trapped in Mahoshi's shadow. And that's pretty much where the episode ends. They've gotten through 2 innings on either side, and even though Mahoshi's feeling really great, he realizes that he has a lot more game to play.
Right. So this episode was pretty good at establishing the difference between the two teams, about how both team like Mihoshi is a team that just sort of relies on instinctive talent. Like, they go around and recruit other players from like other regions, but they don't really come together as a whole. Essentially, they're all kind of
the classic team of individuals.
Yes, exactly. It's the common conflict that we see throughout pretty much every sports anime. The team of individuals versus the team as a group. But what's nice about this one, again, it's subtle because it doesn't really beat you over the head with that message.
No.
It does it in small ways, like the fact that Oda doesn't really care about the fact that he was even struck out. Like, Kano even throws at him like, look, man, I've seen what this guy can do. Nobody else on this team even understands, like, what this guy is doing. And I thought that was a really nice moment to kind of have that sort of, like, to have that acknowledgement that there was at least somebody who understood that, like, Mihashi actually did kind of know what he was doing, but nobody would actually, like, accept that from him. Everybody just wanted to blame nepotism for their losses rather than actually taking responsibility for themselves.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, too, that Kano's like, dude, nobody believes that. That's just, who is it? Hatake.
Yeah,
who
Hatake
was still incredulous about Mahashi's performance, but on some level, everyone knew that Mahashi had something. He had something else going on. He wasn't starting every game because he was terrible,
Right, like that. Like, maybe nepotism is what maybe got him there in the first place, but he always had that little talent that, at the very least, whoever their coach was probably saw in him, but the rest of the team was never able to pull it together.
Yeah, they just sort of resented things enough that...
Right. Again, it's one of those great things about the series that it kind of acknowledges that these are high school students. They don't really want to see that the issue with their team was not... Like, it comes off like these are a bunch of punk kids who want to blame, like, the stupid adults for their problems, essentially. Like, we would have been great if Mihashi's grandpa just didn't make him be the pitcher.
Yeah.
Like, rather than, like, realizing, no, this guy actually knows what he's doing. You guys just aren't talented enough to understand. Or it's like, maybe not talented enough, but you guys are too stubborn to actually figure out how to work with him.
Right. There was a couple of terms I wanted to go over, for a couple of baseball terms from this episode. The first, which has been mentioned a few times before, but I realized we didn't talk about, was cleanup hitter.
Right.
Do you know what cleanup hitter means?
A cleanup hitter is basically, it's who they get. I think it's when they have, like, I think they're like fifth in the batting order.
They're fourth.
They're fourth. Basically, they're the ones who are supposed to come in after the first three who bat and get the runs for anybody who made it onto base.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that...
No, you nailed it, yeah.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
Yeah, it's like the idea is that the first three batters should be able to get on base. At least one or two of them should be able to get on base, and then the fourth batter is your strongest batter, and he will clean up, meaning he will clean the bases and get everybody home.
Right.
And so that's just a very traditional term that when you're batting fourth, you're batting cleanup, even though in modern baseball that's not necessarily the best strategy.
Right.
A lot of times now they focus more on like putting the best hitters even higher in the order than fourth, because they get more opportunities to bat. Right. So like if you put the strongest hitter first, then he's going to have that many more opportunities to bat during the game. So ultimately you decide that that's more worthwhile than putting them behind some weaker batters to get them home. So again, that's a debate that's occurring in baseball right now about exactly what you're supposed to do with the cleanup hitter.
Right. I thought that was interesting in this episode as well, is that they kind of highlighted that with Tajima, that look, just because he's our best batter, he's not going to be able to get those home runs every single time because, he's got a pretty small frame. So it kind of goes back to the whole establishing the whole does it work better as a group rather than the individual? And that's the whole deal with Tajima, is that, look, this guy is great, but he can't do anything really without you guys. He can get on base, sure, but he's not going to be able to, like, get any runs because he's not going to be knocking them out of the park.
Yeah, and so that was interesting, too, because they described Tajima also bats cleanup, but Momoe described him as a non-traditional cleanup hitter, meaning, he's not like Oda, he's not huge, he's not particularly powerful, but what she did call him was a high on-base percentage cleanup hitter.
Right.
Which is a pretty self-explanatory term, but on-base percentage just means that of the number of times that you step up to the plate, what percentage of times do you end up getting at least to first base? Right. So that can be hits, but that can also be taking a walk or getting a hit by pitch, or basically just any other way of getting on to the bases. So even though he doesn't have a ton of power, he does find his way onto the bases a lot.
Right. He's very skilled at actually hitting the ball.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's not even just hitting, though. That's what I'm saying, is that, like, he can see the strike zone so well that he's good at coercing pitchers to giving him walks, too.
Right. Fair enough. But, one final thing I want... Unless you had more baseball terminology.
Go ahead.
Okay. One final thing I wanted to bring up as well was the conflict between Hanai and Tajima.
Oh, yeah.
Which was that we kind of plays back into the whole fact that these are a bunch of high school students. Hanai kind of gets lost in his own selfishness there, because his whole thing is that he's trying to exactly replicate what Tajima did, because Tajima... basically what Tajima did was he had a big showy at-bat. He basically forced Kano into using his specialty forkball just so that he couldn't hit it, just so he could prove that he could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And Hanai basically tries to do that, and he fails.
Well, yeah,
that they don't get a run.
It's even the exact same sequence, because
right.
What he does, Tajima, he takes 2 strikes on fastballs, and then he takes a single ball from a fastball just because he's waiting for that forkball, and so on the 4th pitch, when it's 1 and 2, he gets the forkball, he just drops the head of the bat low, and he's able to push it into the outfield. And yeah, and Hanai has the exact same patterns: 2 strikes, 1 ball, and then he's looking for the forkball, and he gets it, but he still misses.
Right. Exactly.
And so there is this follow up with Momoe. She's not like mad at him, but she just says like, "Oh, you were trying to get that forkball, weren't you? Just trying to be just like Tajima." And he's like, "Well, yeah." And he's like, "I thought I could do it, Right. So she recognizes like it's okay to want to replicate people who can do certain things. It's okay if you think you can pull it off. So not like criticizing him necessarily.
Right. So it's basically like, look, it's good that that if you want to do something that you can do to improve yourself, but please keep in mind, this did cost us the run, because Tajima cannot get on, like, mm-hmm. He's not going to be getting those runs himself, so we can't just lean on Tajima.
Right.
So,
but at the same time, Momoe also knows Hanai well enough to know that what motivates him is by challenging him to rise to a certain level. So right. Instead of just saying, "Don't do that again," like, "How dare you do that without asking," or something like that. No, she doesn't do that. She says, "Next time, make sure you hit the forkball. Like, next right. time, figure out a way to make it work. So, like, I know you want to match Tajima, and that's fine, and I'm going to validate that desire. Right. But you have to figure out a way to pull it off. And now the ball's in your corner."
Yeah, exactly. And it's good, and it's great that she's able to kind of treat them all as individuals on the team.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of this recognition, because she does kind of have to play teacher to them just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, anyway, with that all in mind, would you mind moving on to encouragement of climb?
I would not mind. Why don't you tell me how those episodes went?
I mean, you saw them too, but...
Yeah, but I want you to.
Fair enough. Okay, so episode 10, they are descending the mountain, and they cross a river. Aoi kind of has to lead Kokona across because she still has her broken shoe. And so she kind of has to take a lead role for her. Unfortunately, Aoi isn't very good at this either, so... Aoi does. But Hinata ends up having to come back and kind of help them both out. They make it back to the nature center, which is where their bus stop is. They exchange information with Kokona and promise to see each other again. Next episode, Aoi does just that. She has a sleepover with Kokona, and they have a lovely time making French toast and other sweets, whereas Hinata states that is actually hanging out with Kaede. And they end up getting ingredients for the next day because they're going on a trip to a riverside. And then the final episode of the season, this episode 12, they make it to the riverside, and they have a lovely time setting up camp, making food from ingredients that Hinata had just sort of picked out at random. They end up making like a delicious tomato risotto, and she also grabs a water gun and starts spraying Aoi with it, and they get into a water gun fight. And that's kind of the end of the season. They kind of leave off with this sort of inkling for what they're going to do next season, which is climb a mountaintop so that they can see the Milky Way. Because they're in the city and there's too much light.
Right.
So, yeah. Perfectly fine couple episodes. Nothing... These episodes kind of drove home the fact that Aoi is officially out of her shell now.
Yeah.
She takes the lead with Kokona for most of the time, because she was the one who actually called Kokona to see if she wanted to go to the mountainside with them, or to the riverside.
Yeah, and then Kokona was the one who asked if they could do a sleepover, so that was sort of the thing. She realized that, Kokona was pulling her even more forward.
Yeah.
But she ended up enjoying it.
Yeah. And so much so that she even asked, that was kind of the big moment where she was able to ask her, hey, can we maybe do this again sometime? Completely of her own volition. She also kind of got to take a little... I kind of thought Kokona was kind of a parallel a little bit to Hinata, because Hinata had to end up... Or, not to Hinata, to Aoi, because she ended up having to play the leader a little bit. She had to take a bit more of an initiative with Kokona in order to lead her across the lake. Or the river.
The river, yeah.
Yeah. Perfectly fine. I thought the ending of the season was a little on the nose because they had to have this conversation between Kaede and Kokona talking about how much Aoi has changed, even though they actually didn't really know her.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wasn't totally sure how Hinata related to Kaede, where they were just hanging out on their own.
Right. Like, have those two ever spoken? Like, they never really had that situation where you kind of got to see them, like, get together.
Right.
Or how, they didn't really know Aoi before she started to be a little bit more outgoing. Like, they're like, oh, wow, she's really changed a lot since she met Hinata. You guys didn't know her before she met Hinata.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a little on the nose.
Yeah. Yeah, these episodes kind of lacked mountain climbing, which is ostensibly the basis of the show. But...
Right. The series seems a little bit poorly, maybe misleadingly named. It should be called Encouragement of Hike.
Yeah.
That sounds a little bit closer to what it should be.
That's true. We'll see just how intense it gets in Season 2. But Season 2 is a 24-episode season.
Right, so plenty of room to start to have some fully devoted to mountain climbing.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Somehow I'm down it, but
overall, fine.
Yeah, fine.
I have no negative feelings or resentment towards it.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is about as much as we can say for this type of show.
Yeah, exactly. It's better than most in this very, very narrow genre.
Yeah. Cool beans. Well, thanks for joining me in there at the end there, Matt. Yeah.
It's
my pleasure. Appreciate that.
It's my pleasure, and I will see you next week.
Cool. Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is kosiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We will be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.